Have you ever been sitting across from your therapist and feeling like they don't get you at all? They don't seem interested or invested, or it's just not the right fit? Well, you can fire your therapist. And today we're going to talk about 10 reasons why you might. So I'm Dr. Mercedes Okosi. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in New York City. And as a psychologist and someone who's also been a patient in therapy, I know that sometimes it's not always the best fit. And there are some issues where you can bring it up in the room, talk through them, develop a better understanding of how you can connect. And there are some non-negotiables where you may consider firing your therapist. Now, what does it mean to fire your therapist? Basically, it means to tell your therapist that you're no longer interested in services, you're gonna stop coming to sessions and moving on. And that's fine. A lot of times people have uncomfortability around this, but you're paying them whatever fee they're charging to have a place where you can talk about your thoughts and feelings, and also to get their expertise and in a safe enough environment where you're challenged, because therapy is difficult and it is work sometimes, but you're also being held. So what are those reasons why you might fire a therapist? Number one, and this is something that I did my dissertation research on, racial microaggressions. But if there are ever any, whether explicit or covert, signs of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, microaggressions, whatever it may be, you can definitely choose to leave and not come back. It makes sense that you wouldn't want to be in a place where you're trying to get help, but someone fundamentally has biases against who you are. And in my research, I saw everything from, I interviewed people who had been in therapy where they had this happen. And it was everything from, I can say this because I have a Black friend, or therapists asking intrusive questions about people's culture that didn't have anything to do with the treatment, but were just their own curiosity or their own gaze of looking into someone's life and making certain assumptions and things like that. And it can be a very uncomfortable and challenging position to be in, to feel like you have to, like many marginalized people do, go through the double-edged sword of speaking up for yourself, but then also being perceived in a certain way. All of that is too much additional mental energy to be in therapy where you're already doing a lot of work. So racism, sexism, etc., fired. Number two, generally feeling unsafe. So, of course, like I said, therapy should be challenging. If you and your therapist just met every week and were friends and there was no uncomfortability or no difficulty experiencing or expressing an emotion you haven't expressed before, then how much work are you really doing? At the same time, you should never feel physically unsafe. But even emotionally, being able to both challenge yourself, but be in a place where you can give feedback about the pace of things or the content of certain aspects of therapy that you may be more slow to engage with. You should feel physically and emotionally safe in therapy. If you feel unsafe, if you feel whatever feeling of unsafety or uncomfortability that's not in the realm of just these feelings are uncomfortable, but I can get through them, then feel free to move on. Number 3 is lack of consistency. So, one, just for professionalism, your therapist should be on time, should let you know about appointment changes, should be checking in with you to collaborate on the logistical aspects of meeting for the therapy sessions, and should communicate with you about if anything changes. But then also for not just logistic, but emotional reasons, a lot of times, especially in trauma therapy, but a lot of times in general, people have come to therapy with a lot of chaotic and inconsistent things happening in their lives. And so to have that 1 hour a week for them, that's just their time, that they know someone's going to show up, is really important for the emotional aspect of things. Number 4, they don't seem like they're listening. So if I've had people talk about like their therapist falling asleep on them in the middle of a session, not remembering things from week to week, or just missing key points of aspects of their lives that they've already told the therapist, feeling like they're not really being listened to and having to re-explain things. It's our job as therapists to not necessarily remember every single word for word what our patients tell us, but to constantly be thinking about and developing and formulating the different themes and important aspects of stories that people are telling us. So you should have a general sense that my therapist hears me, understands me, asks more questions for clarification, and seems like they're listening and seems like they care what I have to say. So another reason you could fire a therapist if you feel like they're just not listening. Number 5, boundary crossing. So this is a big one. And in fact, I remember learning that the number 1 ethical violation is dual relationships, and sometimes particularly sexual relationships with patients. So that's like, just no. 1, if your therapist is initiating that boundary crossing, then that's considered unethical. It plays on the power dynamic that they have with you as like therapist to patient, and it also will completely derail and distract from the work that you're doing. But same thing too if your dual relationship is like a friendship. As therapists, we can never be completely objective because we're also people who have our own subjective opinions and ideas. But we're not meant to be friends with patients because in friendships, you may withhold or say certain things based on wanting to maintain that relationship with a friend. So you may not tell a friend how much they, like what they could have done differently in a situation, or talk about their character flaws, etc. Whereas therapists, we're supposed to challenge some of those things. So being in any kind of other relationship or friendship can make it so that we develop more bias than we should have. So if there's any signs of boundary crossing, you can let that therapist go. Number 6, if they don't challenge you. I've heard many times people will come to therapy with me and say, oh, my last therapist just said, and like I didn't feel like they were helping me, asking me questions or doing anything. Even in like a very deep analytical therapy, where the person is examining your patterns of relationships and thoughts and meanings and things, there should still be a sense that you're challenged to gain some new insight, interpret something a different way, or look into yourself in a way that you haven't before. It shouldn't feel like just venting every single time or a report of your weekly activities. There should be some aspect of growth. So if you're not feeling challenged, not feeling like you're gaining things in therapy, you can fire that therapist and move on. Number 7, if the therapy becomes about them. So this is a point about self-disclosure and other ways that the therapist can make the sessions about them, which I'll talk about in future videos. But it should feel like, again, therapy is your time. The questions and responses your therapist asks or provides should feel like they're in service of getting to help you unfold the stories that you're telling with more detail or feeling, or things that you might be helpful to express. It shouldn't feel like your therapist is asking you questions just out of their own curiosity that are not helpful to the overall goal of being helpful to you, or telling you things about themselves that are unsolicited, or not along the lines of the goals that you have. So I remember talking to someone who said that their previous therapist had started to make all of their sessions about like their own interest in the patient's culture. So asking about like, what was their parents' arranged marriage like, beyond asking about family, but talking about how and making assumptions about the person's culture and things like that, or talking about how they have a friend who's from that same country, and it becoming more about the therapist than the person that they were supposed to be helping. So yeah, in other ways where it becomes about the therapist, that's a definitely legitimate reason to want to go elsewhere, to feel like you have your own space, including like the therapist disclosing or making the session about their own feelings and different things like that can feel really weird. Number 8, if you're just done with therapy, you feel like you've accomplished the goals that you, or gained the insight that you came to gain or to accomplish, and you feel like most things you can handle on your own without the need of weekly therapy sessions or bi-weekly sessions or whatever it may be, and that there may be another time in your life where you come back to therapy, but you're done. Number 9, it's just not a good fit. Again, this is you being able to feel your own intuition of just how it feels to be in the room with the person. If there's something that's non-tangible but that just feels uncomfortable, beyond something that you could manage in terms of feelings and talk about, but some other uncomfortability, then you don't have to be there. You can go to one session, one intake, feel like it's not a good fit, and move on, find someone else. I remember hearing people talk about finding a therapist as like interviewing, pretty much, because you're paying them to work for you or work with you on your concerns. So it should feel like, as much as you have access to this, that you have chosen someone that you feel good with. And finally, if they don't specialize in an area or are not equipped to help you with your concern. So for example, if you have an eating disorder and find a therapist who has never worked with someone with eating disorders, may not be able to help you with specialized expertise in that area. Same thing if you have PTSD, go to a therapist who is a trauma therapist, so they have that area of specialty. So those are 10 reasons why you may fire your current therapist, go to one session and know that it's time to to look for someone else, or even bring up some of these topics with your current therapist to see if they can be worked through, but all legitimate reasons to honor your boundaries. Go elsewhere if you need to. Go where you feel like you're being treated well. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever had bad therapy experiences, needed to fire a therapist, went to one session and knew immediately no, or any other thoughts. But yeah, thank you for making it to the end of the video. Like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video, and take care. Hello, this little box can reveal a lot about you, your family, and your relationships, and it can be the spark to conversations you have always wanted to have but didn't, or maybe didn't have the words to have. If you haven't seen me before, I'm Dr. Mercedes Okosi, a licensed clinical psychologist in New York City who specializes in trauma and PTSD, and I created this product called The Reunion to inspire people to have conversations about especially trauma, intergenerational trauma, and other mental health concerns within families, and that affect individuals and our relationships we have because we grew up in those families. So there are 100 cards with prompts, questions, coping exercises so you can actively work on things, and information about trauma. The first 25 people to pre-order will get a free 30-minute processing session so that after you've used the cards on your own, with a significant other, with a family member, you can talk to an expert about what came up. Find this and more information about me at www.growthworkpsych.org/shop. And look out for this soon. Take care.